Brazil. So so I'd like to, we still have one, okay, now we have the last speaker from Russia in the process. So everybody's here, we have the quorum. I would like to welcome everyone, even though this year is dramatically different and changed a lot of things. I'm glad to see you. Let me briefly introduce myself. My name is Evgeny Fokin. I'm Director for International Cooperation at N+ Group, a global leader in low carbon aluminum production and in renewables. I also serve as the Russian chair of BRICS Business Council Working Group on Energy and Green Economy. Today we will discuss a subject that becomes more and more relevant today, and that is sustainable development. Before we do that, I would like to introduce our speakers. So Brazil today is represented by Legal Vice President of Natura, Ana Costa, welcome, and Executive Director of UNICA, Brazilian Sugarcane Industry Association, Eduardo Laio. Russia will be represented by Green Economy Program Director of WWF Russia, Mikhail Babenko, Co-Chair of Russian Aluminium Association, Artem Satur, and First Deputy Head of Foreign Projects and International Cooperation Department of Russian Railways, Kirill Muzalevsky. Our Indian speakers are Kishore Nair, Chief Operating Officer of Avada Group, and Abhay Pathak, Head of Corporate Sustainability at Tata Motors. China is represented by Liu He, academician of Chinese Academy of Engineering, Chief Scientist of Research Institute of Petroleum Exploration and Development at CNPC, Deputy Director, China Oil and Gas Strategy Research Center, who is also chair of the Chinese side of BRICS Working Group on Energy and Green Economy. The second speaker from China is rotating president of Qing Group, Luan Gangfu. Next, I'd like to introduce speakers from South Africa. Brian Dames, Chief Executive of African Rainbow Energy and Power, who is also the chair of South Africa in the Working Group on Energy and Green Economy. And our second speaker, Levogang Zulu, Chief Executive at AV Light Steel. Each of our speakers has years of unique experience, and the 2 hours that we have today would not be enough to give a broad introduction to them and list all their professional achievements. Since we're indeed limited of time, I'd like to start our conference. Each speaker will have 8 minutes, and if we have some time left afterwards, we'll have maybe some additional discussion and Q&As. And before we start, I have one thing to ask the speakers. After you finish your speech, please don't forget to push the mute button. So now I will go with the questions for the Russian speakers. As we know, unfortunately, some companies did make it through the crisis of COVID-19 pandemic. There were also companies that did rethink some of the business process by allowing employees to work remotely from home while maintaining efficiency. There were some positive outcomes. First of all, measures were taken to ensure the safety of employees, but also it helped to reduce operational costs, which in turn allowed to reduce emissions. Scientists did publish reports that closing borders and halting some of the industrial and other processes led to a decrease of greenhouse gas emissions. So the question is, can we use this moment and turn it into momentum, containing emissions in the near future as soon as possible, to work together towards reducing emissions, including but not limited to energy-intensive industries, to meet the Paris Agreement goals? Mikhail, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Hello, everyone. Thank you, Mr. Chair, for a very convenient question, and it is really a big honor for me to open this discussion. The first statement is that what you've asked, it is not a question. It is a must. Unfortunately, for many years, there is a sort of a delusion that economy and ecology are two things that are opposing one another. But this is not so. According to our experience, we have many cases, including BRICS countries, when these two issues are going hand in hand. The question is that the economic problems and pandemic raised new challenges to the business and to the society. Yes, you're absolutely right that some businesses had to close down, but nevertheless, we see that we observe new patterns of behavior. We observe new models of economic development, and we really need to take the momentum, and I will try to explain why. Yes, there was some science and there was some visual evidences that biodiversity comes back, that the air becomes cleaner, that wildlife visits towns and cities. But the problem is that these achievements are not sustainable. Because if we are going to face fast economic recovery, in business as usual model, we will go back very fast with pollution, with waste, with discharges, and exploitation of wildlife. And this is definitely not the model which we are searching for. We still have some homework to do. First of all, to look at new business models which evolved since pandemic started. And some practices should become more sustainable, should become really business models. Second, we need to look at our own experiences and cases and exchange these experiences to find what is working, what is not working, and how we need to operate in order to reduce our greenhouse gas emissions, but also to reduce our pressure on ecosystems. Every year we have a very sad day. It is called Overshoot Day. It is calculated by Global Footprint Network. And this is the day when humanity uses all biological resources which an Earth can recover during the year. And after this day, we use resources which ideally should be used by our next generations. And every year this day is far and far from December 31. The exception is this year, when we managed, because of economic problems and because of pandemic, to move this date from 29th of July back to 22nd of August. But yet it is not, again, a sustainable pattern. And we need to make conclusions out of this in order to make it, to make a model which will not undermine the need for growing well-being, while not undermining our environmental surrounding. And here we touch upon on what is green economy development is. From our perspective, this is the castle which stands on four pillars. First is low carbon development. Second is resource efficient development. Third is inclusive. And last but not least, it is the economy which is investing in natural capital. If you ask me which pillar is more important, I would say that they are absolutely equal. And the model will not fly if they are not equal. We're talking a lot about reduction of carbon dioxide emissions and greenhouse gas emissions. But I would like to remind all representatives of BRICS countries that BRICS countries are the leading in providing ecosystem services. If we look at our biocapacity, we make up nearly 40% of the global biocapacity. And this is our, first of all, competitive advantage, and this is our long-term resource which we should take care of. Because all we depend on ecosystem services like forests, like fresh water, like soil, and so on and so forth. So summing up, as I mentioned at the very beginning, it is not a question, should we change or not? We definitely have to. We definitely should be seeking for new models of economic development, exchange experiences, and take the advantage of our ecosystem services which we have. I will be happy to answer questions, should there be any, and pass the microphone and the floor to other speakers. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mikhail. I think that we'll have the questions if there are later when we have time. And I would like to pass on the microphone to Artem Asatur from the Russian Aluminium Association. Please, Artem, you have the floor.
Well, thank you, Evgeny, for this brilliant roundtable and putting together such an outstanding panel of speakers today. Actually, I prepared a brief presentation, a slide pack that I was hoping that you would put on. Anyway, technically it's impossible. I can do without it.
Well, they should put it on, but probably if you start now, so that we.
Okay. Well, actually, as a representative of the aluminium industry, I was hoping to speak about some practical things that our industry is doing to foster the sustainable development. First of all, a few words about our association. We're a non-profit organization representing the entire aluminium value chain, from mining of bauxite to alumina refining to smelting of aluminium to manufacturing of high value added aluminium products. Besides manufacturing companies, among our members are okay. Here's my presentation. If you could go to the slide 2, please. Thank you. Besides manufacturing companies, our members are business associations, education and research institutes. In total, we have 120 members. Our members account for 100% of primary aluminium production and the production of 60% of the manufactured aluminium goods, including foil, flat rolled products, and extrusion. Russian downstream sector, as you may know, uses aluminium produced by Rusal, who sources over 95% of its energy from clean hydroelectric power plants, which helps reduce the carbon footprint throughout the value chain down to the final product. Our companies supply low carbon aluminium products to key sectors of the economy, which are listed here. They include power sector, shipbuilding and airspace industry, transport, auto industry, consumer products, and packaging. By the way, a few years ago, we signed an MOU with the Chinese Non-Ferrous Metals Industry Association, and we have since been meeting regularly. Then we have recently signed an MOU with the Indian Jawaharlal Nehru Aluminium Research Development and Design Center, which is an autonomous body of the Ministry of Mines of India, and are planning very interesting webinars, the first of which will take place in the current week. I take the opportunity actually to congratulate the Brazilian Aluminium Association, ABAL, with its 50th anniversary. We've been working with them and with the fellow association from South Africa in the International Aluminium Institute. Could you go to the slide 4, please? Yeah, thank you. Here are some basic facts about aluminium. Aluminium consumption is growing faster than other metals. The use of aluminium can be infinite. It can be repeatedly recycled or remelted without losing its mechanical properties. A staggering 75% of the aluminum produced during the industry's existence is still in use today. Aluminum recycling saves 95% of the energy needed to produce the primary aluminum, which reduces greenhouse gas emissions that come from the electricity generation. Next slide, please. Among the industries that consume aluminum, construction is the biggest consumer. It accounts for roughly a quarter of the aluminum consumption in Russia. And the choice of aluminum is natural because aluminum has very important characteristics and features that are useful for the construction industry. For instance, its high strength to weight ratio. Aluminum is resistant to harsh environments. Large life cycle of aluminum structures. Aluminum is a key element of smart buildings, by the way. You know that the use of smart facades and window frames from aluminum reduces energy consumption in building, both for cooling and heating. Next slide, please. Automakers also trend toward increasing the use of aluminum because of its unique combination of properties. Reducing the weight of the car increases its payload and range, taking into account the weight restrictions for trucks in Russia and other markets. The reduction of their weight allows to carry more payload. This means fewer trips and logically less CO2 emissions. In terms of passenger safety, aluminum parts better absorb impacts, making your car safer and reducing its weight. There are also legal requirements in some jurisdictions regarding the proportion of recycled components in vehicles. For example, in the EU, it is the End-of-Life Vehicle Directive. The new version of the directive stipulates that 95% of the weight of the vehicle must be recyclable. From this perspective as well, aluminum is the material of choice for the car makers. Slide 7, please. I can speak about how aluminum makes our life and our world more sustainable at great length, but I think due to time constraints, I'd rather mention 2 more examples. Mobile aluminum landing ports and runways can be easily deployed without heavy machinery in hard-to-reach and remote areas. We presented the system to the United Nations leadership last year at the Moscow Airspace Show, Max 2019, and suggested using it for the air transport support to UN missions. Then aluminum oxychloride coagulant for water purification. It can be used for treatment of both domestic and industry wastewater. The use of aluminum oxychloride for water purification by coagulation with subsequent sedimentation actually reduces bacteria and viruses by 2 to 3 orders of magnitude. Slide 9, please. Next slide, please. Before leaving the floor to the next speaker, I actually would like to mention one very important subject that in fact concerns many industrial sectors, not only aluminium, and cuts across many of the sustainable industrial development goals. The COVID-19 pandemic has demonstrated that aluminium and other key industries are at the core of the resilience of our economies. Making our industries more resilient to global challenges of such magnitude as we're facing now requires very big changes that involve sustainable practices like implementing resource and energy efficient technologies, enhancing workplace safety, adapting workforce to the Industry 4.0. In the Brasilia Declaration in 2019, the BRICS leaders, you may remember that, reaffirmed their commitment to multilateralism, sustainable development, and implementation of the Paris Agreement. Achieving these goals largely depends on the BRICS industrial sectors, interconnected by global supply chains, and their ability to gradually transition to the new industrial era involving profound institutional changes. So designing such framework requires a dialogue between countries on pathways to the sustainable world in the spirit of cooperation and, of course, mutual recognition of national circumstances. Our association supports the initiative that was recently put forward by the B20 that has urged the G20 leaders to initiate a multilateral dialogue on sustainable industrial development. The proposed dialogue between governments would provide aluminium and other key industries with solutions to long-standing issues, help them unleash resources locked in inefficient production capacities, and make them more resilient to public health and economic crisis. Here on this slide are some of the items that, from our perspective, should be put on the agenda of the proposed dialogue. So the dialogue will help the largest countries bridge the differences on pathways to sustainable development goals and agree on framework for universal transition to green and carbon-free technologies in the industrial sectors. Its natural outcome will be a fair and inclusive global trade system which, without protectionism, including the new form of protectionism, the carbon protectionism. I propose that our forum gives support to this initiative and encourages our government to advance a high-level discussion that would put it into action. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Artyom. I think that this is a very good example how an industry can complement to the sustainable development and at the same time, and of course, make itself cleaner and reduce its own emissions too. Let me then invite Kirill Mozalevsky of the Russian Railways. Transportation is a major economic factor at the same time, also a major emitter. So let's see what Kirill can tell us about what RZD is doing in this. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Dear participants of the Business Forum, I would like to welcome you on behalf of Russian Railways and thank you for the opportunity to participate in the discussion on the prospects for cooperation in the BRICS countries in the fields of ecology. The next slide, please. Today, as you know, ecology is an important argument in the development of transportation and logistics. And the railway occupies, as you see, a worthy position here. The amount of carbon dioxide emissions from rail transport is 7 times lower than that of civil aviation and 5 times lower than that of motor transport. The next slide, please. This is especially important given the scale of the company's operations. The Russian railway network is, as you know, is more than 85,000 kilometers long. We transport over 1.2 billion tons of cargo annually, and our cargo turnover is about 2.6 trillion ton kilometers, which is 1/3 of the world's railway cargo turnover. The next slide, please. In view of the company's scope of business, it is very important to emphasize that railway freight transportation is also highly energy efficient. According to the results, as you can see, of the International Energy Agency's assessment, Russian Railways is at the first place on this indicator. We're developing further in the fields of energy saving. We have a lot of projects that allow us to reduce energy intensity and environmental pressure of our transportation. The next slide. In Russia, transport accounts for about 1/3 of all greenhouse gas emissions. At the same time, Russian railways account for only 1% of CO2 emissions from the total greenhouse volume created by the transport complex. Along with eco-efficiency of freight carrying, we achieved sufficient progress in the reduction of ecological cost of passenger transportation. For example, a train travel of one passenger by train is twice more ecologically friendly, I mean in terms of CO2 emissions, than the same travel by bus, and 3 times than by plane, and 4 times than by car. We have developed and approved by the board of directors the program of increasing environmentally responsibility and various related documents. The company's environmental strategy is aimed at reducing the burden of all the company's activities. On the environment, priority is given to green technologies. The next slide, please. I think that there is no alternative to electric traction on the railway in the near future. For example, for transportation of the 20-foot container from Shanghai to Vienna by New Silk Road, electric rail transport emits 16 times less CO2 in the atmosphere than sea transport, 73 times less than road transport, and 710 times less than air transport. The next, please. In conditions of mixed freight and passenger traffic, we were trying to develop an energy optimal schedule and combine it with applying the optimized train driving systems on locomotives. These systems allow the train to move either automatically or advise to the driver how to move in the most energy optimal mode. This technology has been implemented in Russian railways since 2012. The reduction in the consumption of fuel and energy sources for traction due to introduction of this technology is observed from 3 to 7%. The next, please. Water resources are also essential components of the environment. Over the periods of the last 10 years, within the framework of implementation of the Russian Railways environmental strategy, we have constructed and renovated 76 treatment facilities. This resulted in a reduction of wastewater discharges by 8.3 million cubic meters for this period. At the same time, our company reduced water use by implementing water conservation technologies, transferring water supply facilities into municipal property, regulating and instrument metering water usage. The next, please. Implementation of innovative technologies allowed us to increase the level of air and water protection, enhance the rational recycling of waste, reducing greenhouse gas emissions and noise pollution. Reduction emissions of harmful substances into the atmosphere from stationary sources are supported by implemented electric heating and new gas and catching equipment, eliminating low operation coal boiler rooms and many other activities, as you can see in the slide. The next, please. Our work in the field of ecology was highly evaluated by global investors who invested in total 500 million euro in our green euro bonds issued in last May. This was the first such transaction among all issuers from Russia and the Commonwealth of Independent States. The 2.2% rate on this transaction was the lowest in the history of placement by Russian issuers. The success of the transaction was confirmed by the fact that it received the award for best transaction for the initial placement of Eurobonds. In this pandemic July, following the results of the General Assembly of the International Union of Railways, the Russian Railways Company joined the Declaration of Sustainable Development, thereby confirming our readiness to actively contribute to the implementation of the Paris Climate Agreement. Russian Railways is a company that has committed itself to contributing to the solution of climate change and its consequences, responsibly and purposefully implements the program of reducing greenhouse gas emissions. Along with joining this declaration, we continue our work on reduction of CO2 emission, and in this year, according to preliminary estimates, we are coming to the target volume of 2030 of reduction in greenhouse gas emissions. RGD experience and technologies in the area of ecology are in high demand abroad, and we invite all the BRICS countries to develop cooperation in this field together. Thank you for your attention.
Well, thank you, Kirill. Now that the Russian speakers have done their presentations, we'll switch to Brazil and go to the more natural order of the letters in the BRICS name. So I have a question for Ana Costa. Natura is an important voice on sustainability and social impact movement globally. How has its global action on these issues shaped your company's policies and business model? And how can other BRICS companies adopt similar measures to promote sustainable development? Please, Anna.
Thank you. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. So thanks for the question. I'm very pleased to be here and talk about a matter that is very important and a great pillar to Natura & Co in the world, that is sustainability in all aspects, such as environmental, social, and economic. So I have a presentation. I don't know if it's possible or not to present. If not, I can talk. So, okay, I'm gonna continue and okay, it's going. So I'm also very confident as a member of the Brazilian chapter of Women Business Alliance, created by BRICS in 2019, that we have a great opportunity to contribute in an effective way for sustainable growth as a whole. So I'm gonna present here a vision for Natura & Co. Just for introduction, Natura today is responsible in Brazil and worldwide for 4 brands. Natura, which is a national brand, Avon, TBS, The Body Shop, and also Aesop, which is an Australian brand. So I'm gonna talk about the vision of sustainability for 2030 in a commitment to life, which was launched in the middle of this year, and also talk about opportunities and ideas about how other countries can be together in this mission. So Natura talks about sustainability. You can go to the next, please. So Natura talk about sustainability for over 30 years, working together with its entrepreneurs, consultants, suppliers, and communities to get a sustainable vision for the business environment as a whole. Our aspiration is that we will dare to innovate, promote positive economic, social, and environment impact, and become the best beauty company for the world. It's not in the world, but our aspiration is to be a beauty company for the world. We know it's not an easy task. However, we really believe that if we use diversity, innovation, and sustainability as 3 pillars in order to grow and to have an aspiration for the world, to combine our aspiration as a business and also what we can promote to our society and also our community as a whole. So when you go to the next, you're gonna have an idea about what is our sustainable vision for 2030. We have 3 pillars. The first one is to address the climate crisis and protect the Amazon in the north of Brazil. So we know that with the coronavirus crisis, we faced a lot of challenges in Amazon. So our intention and our plan, and we have goals and we have a process to measure this, is to reduce our GHG emissions to become net zero, and also to reduce and to have zero deforestation up to 2025. We also have the second pillar that is related to defend human rights and be humankind. That is for our associates, for our consultancies, in order to promote diversity, gender equality, inclusion of underrepresented groups, and living wage for all communities and all our stakeholders. So here we have, again, goals, and we measure this year by year in order to promote the diversity that we want to see in the world. The third pillar is to embrace circularity and regeneration, that we are talking here about our suppliers, about our packaging, and the renewable and use of natural ingredients that we have in Brazil for the world. Next, please. Here is one specific slide about how we can address the climate crisis and protect Amazon. So we have a net zero GHG emission, we have the protection of Amazon, and one important issue is that we have more than 20 years in Amazon promoting local development in a relationship with more than 33 communities, valuing social biodiversity, traditional knowledge, and local culture. So we really believe that doing this, we can create a better future for the next generations. And one important issue here is to have a plan that net zero in carbon emissions by 2030 for the 4 brands. So we have how can we get net zero in carbon and how can we support our suppliers in order to do this. So we have a control and we have goals to get this up to 2030. Next, please. This is one important point that I'd like to point out, that we are not alone and we know that we cannot do this alone. So we have more than 6 million consultants and representatives around the globe. We have more than 34,000 employees and associates, 15 million people impacted by programs on public education in the last 10 years. So the idea is to promote education, is to promote women empowerment. We have causes related to women against domestic violence, to protect women. So the idea is to have social causes that could go together with the business goals in order to promote a sustainable growth in the next 10 years. We have more than 35, no, sorry, one back. Can you go back, please, to the previous one? No. Yeah, just another in numbers. So we have more than 35,000 people in traditional communities in Amazon, which we support with our ingredients, and we pay for this, especially Indians and all the communities that we have in the north of Brazil. And we have more than $500 million invested in Amazon in the last 10 years. So, and more than 1 billion invested in women causes in the last 4 years. The next one. Here is the power of the corporation. So we cannot do this alone. The idea and the guidance here is to work together with competitors. It's not only our cause, it's a cause for a better world. So work together with competitors, scientists, academics, business activists, NGOs, the civil society, and specifically governance. So we need to work together with the governments trying to create public policies in order to leverage all these causes. So what I encourage all the BRICS countries is much more that we should respond to the increased demand for international trade barriers based on minimum environment standards by moving forward with the ESG, that is the ESG agenda, environmental, social, and governance, building and enforcing best practice. So it's important to exchange these best practices and standards to go together. Alone, we cannot do much more than this, but if we join our forces to get this, we can go faster and wider. So also carbon markets regulations could open with new financial opportunities and funds to support sustainable business and also allow a post-COVID greener economic recovery. So this is our belief, talking about policies, talking about governance, and how we can together with governments and other social and civil society build a better future in a sustainable growth. Thank you.
Oh, thank you, Anna. This is a very good illustration that the company with the right policy can make an impact. But again, I agree with you that to resolve this situation, to resolve the problem, the business should work together with the governments and NGOs and the scientists too. Now I have a question for Eduardo. In view of UNICA and Brazil long-term experience in the use of ethanol and biodiesel on a large scale, how can the BRICS countries benefit from this experience? Please, Eduardo, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. First of all, I'd like to thank this kind invitation from the BRICS Business Forum. It's very honored. I'm very honored to be here today, and also to have the opportunity of listening to the very inspiring presentations that I have already heard and hope we'll continue having throughout this very challenging panel. If it's possible to share my presentation. Okay. What I'd like to share with you today is basically about the Brazilian experience on ethanol throughout the last 40-something years, and share with you the thoughts that we have regarding the opportunities that ethanol can have for the 5 BRICS countries in terms of increasing sustainability on the energy metrics of our 5 countries. Next, please. Just a few figures about the current production in Brazil. Brazil produced around 640 million tons of sugarcane, around 30 million tons of sugar that comes from the sugarcane, and also 35 billion liters of ethanol. Around 37,000 gigawatts of bioelectricity, electricity coming from the sugarcane bagasse. And we are now, sugarcane, the #1 source of renewable energy in the country. We account for almost 20% of total energy consumption, both as a fuel and as electricity. And just a very interesting figure, last year, ethanol was able to replace almost 50% of total petrol in lightweight vehicles in the country. Next, please. So it all started in 1973, during the oil crisis. Brazil had a huge dependence on imported oil, and the government here identified that we could produce ethanol from the sugar industry that was already installed in Brazil, and benefit from a higher energy security of the country, and also benefit the sugar industry and the sugarcane growers, as we provided an additional source of income, the diversification of the activity. And this started in the mid-70s of the last century. And after this almost 50 years, we have had lots of interesting lessons during this period. Next, please. We understand that ethanol can be a very interesting solution for 3 major challenges of this century that our 5 countries face right now. The first important challenge that we face is, next please. Next please. Is air pollution. Next please. Air pollution is definitely a major problem of our century. As we can see, if you consider the 50 most polluted cities in the world in 2018, 47% were in both of our BRICS countries, 25 in India, 22 in China. And São Paulo, in turn, due to the use of ethanol, was 879th in the world ranking in air pollution in the world. Next, please. Next. One more, please. So, as you can see, São Paulo is currently the 4th largest city in population in the world. And while in the last 20 years, our car fleet increased in 80%, there was a reduction of around 60% of air pollution in the city. And this is a very important issue, as it's responsible, air pollution is responsible for 4.2 million deaths per year in the world. And ethanol can practically reduce or eliminate the emission of particulate matter in the air. Next, please. And just to conclude this assessment on air pollution, I just like to highlight two very recent studies associating pollution to COVID-19. One was carried out by Harvard University, and the other one by New York University. And they have identified that the increase of 1 microgram of particulate matter in the air can increase in 8% the lethality of COVID-19. And this was also endorsed by the New York University study. Next, please. The second major challenge that ethanol can address is CO2 emissions. Next, please. As you can see, ethanol, depending on the methodology, can reduce up to 90% of the CO emissions compared to gasoline. So it can be a very important solution to address the challenge of climate change. Next, please. Just to give you a figure on what happened in Brazil because of the ethanol use. Since 2003, when we started the flex fuel vehicles, we were able to avoid 535 million tons of CO2 emissions. This is equivalent to reduce around 4 billion trees planted in the same period. Next slide. And this is also equivalent to, next please, 100 million elephants. So this is the weight of the CO2 emissions that Brazil avoided to put in the air because of the use of ethanol. Next, please. And this is the bad news is that this will increase and increase over the years. The expectation nowadays, the transport sector represents 1/4 of total GHG emissions in the world. And the bad news is that the car fleet should double the next 20 years. We should reach around 2 billion units in 2040. Just two important examples. China should triple its fleet over the next 20 years, and India should multiply by 6 its current fleet. So this is a problem that has to be addressed now. Next slide, please. And in terms of GHG emissions, this is an issue that can be very well addressed by China, by India, Russia, that are currently number 1, 3, and 4 in terms of GHG emissions every year. Next, please. Well, and the third and final challenge that ethanol addresses is the economic one. Next. Today, we still have a huge dependence on imported oil, especially China, India, and South Africa. The 3 countries still have a dependence on more than 70% of imported oil that could be sharply reduced with the production of local ethanol. The 3 countries have a huge potential for domestic production. Just to give you an important figure, the next slide, please. We in Brazil, before we started the ethanol program, our dependence in 1973 was around 78%. We have reduced up to 15%. Next, please. So how have we done that, and how we believe that could also be done by other countries? Next slide, please. With right public policies that will ensure biofuel supplies, R&D and auto manufacturers, distribution and retail system, and consumer communication. Next, please. We believe that ethanol is actually a low-hanging fruit. Next, please. As it is a tested and proven efficiency, it has an easy adoption, immediate positive socioeconomic and environmental impacts. It demands low investments and minor change in infrastructure. And my next and final slide shows some ideas that would address forms of cooperation among BRICS countries. Would have opportunities to increase technical, scientific, economic cooperation between our producing countries in the agriculture sector, in the industrial processing, in the auto industry. We would have opportunities in knowledge exchange on public policy and sustainable practices, lessons learned by our 5 countries. We would have opportunities for trade in terms of ethanol and sugar. And finally, direct investments in the business and infrastructure. In the business, we already started some. For instance, in Brazil, we already have some Indian and Chinese companies investing in the sector, but I'm sure that there would be much more opportunities for direct investors in our 5 countries. So thank you very much. And again, appreciate the opportunity of bringing our experience to this forum.
Oh, thank you, Eduardo. And indeed, this is a very useful example which could be looked into. Now let's turn to India, the 5th largest economy in the world. I should say that at the time of increased urbanization, 4 to 5 million young people join the job market. And there's a pressure to multiply GDP. No country so far in the developed world has achieved growth without increasing energy consumption and resultant pollution. But times have changed. With the threat of climate change, India doesn't have the same luxury of burning fossil fuels to power its growth. Hence, other avenues need to be explored. New models of development must be experimented with results in achievement of conflicting objectives. India played the leading role during the COP21 Paris summit and has taken pledge to reduce greenhouse emissions by 33 to 35% of 2005 levels. Please, Kishore Nair, can you share with us the steps that India has taken to reduce carbon emissions, please?
Thank you, Chairman. Good afternoon, all the delegates and the speakers, and good morning to the Brazilian delegates. I'm really impressed with the presentations made by our colleagues from Russia and China, particularly on the statistics that is given by our Brazilian speaker. See, India had a rich cultural heritage, and years back, thousands of years back, we had been worshipping the nature and the trees and fire and all those things. But with, like you rightly said, with the development taking place, the new generation following all the developments deviated from the cultural tradition of loving nature. The result, as we have seen in the last presentation, India has probably the maximum cities, the most polluted cities in the world today. And India is also the 3rd largest emitter of greenhouse gas emissions in the country, only behind China and the USA. So India has understood the gravity of the climate change. Fortunately, India got a visionary leader, like our Prime Minister Narendra Modi, and he is leading the revolution on the clean energy. While he was the Chief Minister of the Gujarat province, he was bringing in a larger solar park. Way back about 10 years back in 2010, he had started a solar park, identifying the need for bringing renewable energy into the forefront. And in order to ensure India's commitment to the environment, India became a signatory to the COP21 in Paris and agreed to 3 major pledges. That was 40% of India's power capacity will be based on non-fossil fuel sources, and reduce the greenhouse gas emission by 35% of 2005 levels by 2030. and increase the forest and tree cover by 2030. And what are the steps taken by India? Immediately after taking over as the Prime Minister of India, Mr. Modi had revised the target of renewable energy capacity addition to 175 gigawatt by 2022. And the solar capacity addition was increased from 20 gigawatt to 100 gigawatt to be achieved by 2022. Lot of policy initiatives were taken to promote the use of renewable energy, and transparency was brought in the project allocation, moving away from the feed-in tariff to the competitive bidding regime. This has brought down the tariff from almost 30 cents to near about 3.5 or 3.2 cents today, probably one of the lowest tariff for producing energy in the world. Lot of solar parks were developed where the investors can come and they can invest into the park, where it is a plug and play type of model, where the land and the transmission is taken care by the government or the solar park development agencies. All the approval processes were simplified, and a lot of exemptions were given in developing solar or renewable energy projects. Many states came up with single window clearances for all approvals, making it much easier for developing renewable energy projects in India. And the result, one of the result was that India has moved in their ease of doing business to almost 70. That is the world ranking today for India. All these steps and policy initiatives attracted a lot of foreign direct investment into the RE sector. India moved to the 5th position in global RE generation installed capacity today. And as of September 2020, India has an installed capacity of 90 gigawatt. That includes 36 gigawatt of solar capacity and 38 gigawatt of wind capacity, and the balance coming from various other biomass and other sources of green energy. And another 50 megawatt is currently under implementation. This is in line with meeting the target of 175 gigawatt in the next 2 years timeline. And 25 gigawatt is under various stages of bidding also. So all these things will add up to 175 gigawatt. And probably we are going to surpass the target set by the Prime Minister of the country. We are also understanding that the renewable energy doesn't supply the power throughout the day or throughout the season. So we are also coming up with a lot of hybrid bids where the wind and solar can be combined, and also combined with storage will supply the power throughout the daytime on a 24/7 basis. And with all these policies, a lot of investments have come into the country. India ranked 3rd in the RE investment in the world today. FDI inflow in RE sector is 12 billion today, $12 billion US today. And the total investment in RE sector so far is 42 billion. That is the current investment which has already happened. And as per the current projections, India's greenhouse gas emissions are expected to be 2.8 to 2.9 gigatons by 2020 and 3.8 to 4.1 gigatons by 2030. So if you compare with the levels of 2010, this is 27 to 35% increase, and 76 to 87% increase from 2010. So that is the increase. In addition to this, government has also taken a lot of initiatives to cut the greenhouse gas emissions. But India is a developing nation, and we also need to balance between the industrial growth and the control of the impact on climate change. So we cannot cut down our development agenda, but at the same time, we also need to control. So what are the other steps what we are doing in addition to the development of renewable energy projects is shutting down all the thermal projects now. Old projects of low efficiency projects are going to be shut down, and they will be replaced with ultra supercritical boilers. All the projects under construction will be replaced with ultra supercritical boilers. And all the old projects will be installed with FGD, that is flue gas desulfurization units, to control the emissions of sulfur emissions. Another initiative taken by the government of India was on replacement of all the fluorescent lamps or the CFL lamps with the LED lamps. And in the last 5 years, this has resulted in huge energy savings, as well as we have replaced 370 million bulbs replaced with LED lamps. So this has resulted in huge energy savings. And another area what we are currently working is on the introduction of electric vehicles. And the current policy is that after 2025, no new plants will be set up for vehicles with based on fossil fuel. And after 2030, no vehicles running on fossil fuel will be sold in India, and everything will be converted into EV. That is the current targets. Lot of tax concessions are being provided for usage of electric vehicles, and a lot of infrastructure is created in the electric charging infrastructure, creating the electric charging infrastructure also. And to discourage the usage of diesel, the life of a diesel vehicle has been now claimed at 10 years. So you cannot use a diesel vehicle more than 10 years. So that is being implemented. And all steps are being taken to reduce the consumption of diesel, which is adding more pollution into the air. And the quality of the oil has been made it mandatory to match up with Euro 6 regulations. In addition to all these things, massive afforestation exercise is being taken by government of India, and all states are coming up with afforestation policies, and all the highways which is under construction, they are all being built. A lot of forest area is built around the highways, and this is a specific target that is given to all the states to afforestation and plant more and more trees. We have planted billions of trees in the last 10 years timeline. So all these things were visible. I mean, the effects of pollution were visible in the during the lockdown period that started sometime in end of March, and for almost 2 months India was under, or maybe 6 weeks India was under total lockdown. Even the cities like Delhi, which is one of the most polluted city, which was coming in the previous chart, we have seen clean and blue skies almost the entire 2 months period where the lockdown was implemented, and we could see crystal clear water in the river that is flowing through Delhi. So these were the effects, and the effects of pollution was very visible, or controlling the pollution was very visible during the lockdown period. So India is, to sum up, India is committed to cutting down the greenhouse gas emissions. We are committed to the pledges that is taken in the COP21, and we look forward to more and more investment coming to India to support the renewable energy development in the country. And with this, I conclude my discussion. Thank you.
Oh, thank you, Kishore. It's very interesting presentation. Here is Abhay Bathak as the head of corporate responsibility of such a major company. It would be interesting to hear your views on opportunities and challenges to transport sector. We understand, of course, that one of the solutions would be to build all cars of aluminum and make them run on biofuels, but probably have a more broader range of ways to resolve this issue. So Abhay, the floor is yours.
Yes, thank you so much. I would like to thank BRICS Business Forum for giving us opportunity to share our views on sustainable development and efforts that we are taking in India at Tata Motors. So thank you so much. I would like to quickly brief you on the SDGs, basically on the SDGs, what we have done on SDGs, and there are some certain opportunities and challenges that we have on specific SDGs related to transport sector, or particularly I could say about the automobile sector. So as SDGs, as you know, there are 17 SDGs, 169 targets, and the core of the SDGs, the basic objective is prosperity for all, and of course protecting the planet. When we talk about prosperity for all, it means for everybody on the corner of the earth. So it is sustainable inclusive development, which is actually as per the agenda of the forum, BRICS Business Forum. So what Tata Motors has done is, in fact, we have done the SDG mapping, 17 goals and 169 targets, and we have mapped them. The relevant targets have been mapped against the functions that are related to those particular targets. And this mapping has been actually disclosed through our sustainability, through our integrated report that we publish every year. So it is available on our website. Now coming to actually the only three SDGs, which would be actually impacting the transport sector or the automobile sector, specific to automobile sector, I would say, one is goal number 7, SDG 7, that is clean and affordable energy. Earlier speaker, honorable speaker, has already given you the focus, the thrust that India has on renewable energy, clean energy that we have, and accordingly India has been working and scaling up the renewable energy. So here one of the target is increasing substantially the renewable energy. And coming to particularly Tata Motors, we are also aspiring to source 100% of renewable energy for running our operations by 2030. And accordingly, we are working on scaling up the renewable energy for our operations. Till last year, we have already achieved 21 plus percentage of renewable energy of the electricity that we have already achieved. The second target of goal 7 is doubling the global rate of improvement in energy efficiency. Now, if we look at this particular target, it is actually an opportunity, because when we talk about improvement in energy efficiency, it is also reduction in cost of the production. So from that point of view, there is heavy focus usually even in the energy efficiency area. We are finding out the every areas, activities, processes wherein we can reduce our energy consumption, improve our energy efficiency. The another thing is, of course, as the earlier speaker has mentioned about the cleaner fossil fuel technologies. Automobile sector, the innovative advanced technologies like the electric vehicles that we are working on, the hydrogen and fuel cells that is going to be the future fuel for automobile sector. So this is something related to SDG 7 on clean and affordable energy. Another goal that I would like to speak is about the goal number SDG 11, which is about sustainable cities and communities. Now, when we talk about sustainable cities and communities, one of the targets under this goal is safe, affordable, accessible, and sustainable transport systems for all, improving road safety, and notably by expanding public transport. So this is a challenge, but at the same time, it is a big opportunity, as Tata Motors is largely into public transport solution. So Tata Motors has been already looking at it. You know that Tata Motors has already into supply of electric buses to various cities. We have already started supplying electric buses to different municipal corporations and cities that we have. So that is an opportunity, huge opportunity, I can say, for Tata Motors that we have, and we are working on that. And of course, that in a way, actually, as my earlier speaker has mentioned, and even the earlier session, earlier panelists have mentioned, there are issues related to urban air pollution because of the vehicle. And with this increase in electric vehicles on the road, there will be impact on the reduction in the air quality, improvement in the air quality, reducing the air pollution. So sustainable cities is offering a huge opportunity in terms of electric vehicles or the increase in public transport on Indian roads. So that way, this is another opportunity that we have. And the another and the last one more goal that I would like to speak is, of course, the climate action, that is SDG 13. So as the earlier speaker has mentioned, India is one of the largest GHG emitters, and transport sector is of course one of the largest contributors. Within transport sector, automobile sector is another major contributor. So we need to work on actually reducing the carbon emissions from the transport sector, the automobile sector, and accordingly we are trying to work not just on the products but in every activity that we have, be it the manufacturing, wherein we are actually working, thrusting on the renewable energy, improving renewable energy. We are working on products which are advanced technology products, which includes cars, electric cars. It also includes the electric buses that we want to run on Indian roads. So we have those technologies available. We are working on advanced technologies like hydrogen fuel cell buses. The trials are already taken place, and we have showcased them in the Auto Expo. In addition to that, we are also working with engaging with our supply chain. The automobile sector is usually is having the complex and multi-tier supply chain. So we are also creating, sensitizing our supply chain. We are taking the climate change to even supply chain, the bottommost level of supply chain. We are trying to monitor and we are trying to promote actually renewable energy efficiency in supply chain, so that they can also contribute to reduce carbon emission in supply chain. So this is how we are trying to work. These are some of the challenges and the opportunities that we have found, and we are aligning ourselves with the SDGs, Sustainable Development Goals, and we are trying to work towards achieving these sustainable Sustainable Development Goals in future. I hope, I think at the time that is given, within that I have covered the points that I wanted to discuss. Thank you so much. If we have more questions, we can discuss further. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you very much. Thank you very much. So now let's turn to China now. So I should say that during the UN General Assembly last September, President Xi Jinping announced that China aims to have CO2 emissions peak before 2030 and achieve carbon neutrality by 2060. That is quite a pledge and a challenge, and will require a lot of work. As I have already introduced our Chinese speakers, we have two major companies from energy and industrial sector. I'd like to start with the energy, and my question to Luhe is, going forward, with energy being a key component of sustainable development, what future is there for Chinese energy sector? What challenges you anticipate, and what opportunities you hope for? So Luhe, please, the floor is yours.
Thanks, Chairman. Ladies and gentlemen, good evening, good morning, good afternoon. Share my presentation, please. But this issue is a big issue for any Chinese. But I would like is to introduce about in China energy transformation situation. Next, please. Next. We have three parts. First, we make this something about the challenge of China energy development. Next, please. Next. China's energy development faces three challenges. Number one is large total consumption, high coal proportion, and serving in environmental issue. In China, its construction about its depend is coal. Almost total is 60%. Next, please. Demand keeps growth. At the core, supply energy transformation hard to the coordinate. Next, please. Third is the high energy consumption intensity. From its map, its curve, you can find is the, from Chinese in consumption intensity from in 1990 to 2019, about 10 years, its decrease is 27%, but its consumption intensity is high compared to another developing country. Next, please. We introduce the general development strategy and the prospects. Next, please. In China transformation and development strategy, we have four the content. Structured reforms on the energy supply side, strictly control total coal and oil consumption. Another one is the excellent is the development of the natural gas industry. Energy technically is expanding no fossil energy supply. We objective is the sufficient energy supply and green low carbonate transformation. Next, please. Its prospects of energy transformation and development. We hope it's 2035 track to realize that natural gas and the new energy consumption proportion reach up 40%. 2015 is the breakthrough 50%. Next, please. Three steps of Chinese energy transformation. Next, please. Further energy, we should control increasement and enhance clean use to the lay and short foundation for the energy growth transformation. Its core is major is the main rule for the Chinese consumption. We should control total consumption. We developing and enhance efficiency and clean use technology, promotion development, decrease mental development. Next, please. About oil, is developing oil substitution and quality upground strive to meet the peak by 2030. Next, please. This gas is developing domestic and another country supply. We depend, it's LNG is from different country, important increase. Strive to the reach production and consumption multiply the increase. Next, please. Next, please. Second, excellent new, no, go down, go. Back, please. Yeah. In Chinese, the excellent rate renewable energy development to be the main force of energy transformation. China has abundant resource about the new renewable energy, which is the wide and good function of the industry development. Next, please. Next, please. It's back. Its wind power is a great potential least 2,000 GW installed capacity can be built through the active promotion. Next. Solar energy improve. Solar is the photovoltaic. Solar is the thermal power and medium temperature heating used to achieve spanning development is the main technology. Increase cost now is the technology is the metro. Next, please. Hydropower is the consolidate and expand wind power scale to the realize multiplied development of the installed capacity. Next, please. Another renewable steadily developed by biomass energy and nuclear power and post-renewable energy integrated development. Next, please. Such importance to energy technology development provide exhausted table impetus for the energy transformation, called concept for the mental energy system, include the CO2 emission, eco-friendly, clear energy technology, energy efficiency, smart energy technology, technique-based material and equipment. Next, please. Its population is great and low carbon transformation and development of Chinese energy present both potential and challenge. Second, the community with shared future for the mankind is great idea for the global. It means Xi Jinping in the new is the make announced is about Chinese the to the 2016 is to control carbon neutrality, but this is responsibility any country, any people for the protection earth. So it's the way China is the government make some just strategy about is the new renewable development is play for the 14.5 plan, national plan, and the long-term plan. So it's the way believe is the can do that. Third is energy transformation and energy ecological and human resource, human development and progress hand in hand with other countries. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you, Liu He. Of course, it's good to know what China is doing, and China being such an important factor influencing the world. Now let's turn to our next speaker, Luan Guanfu. Can you please tell us about your company business and your experience in sustainable development? And another question, today more and more private businesses install solar panels as a means of reducing emissions. Have you noticed growth of interest from other industrial manufacturers and other companies to install solar panels to become greener? Please, Luan Guanfu, the floor is yours.
Minutes. In next few minutes, I'm going to introduce how does Tint take the challenge as an opportunity regarding sustainable development. Could you please share my PPT? Okay, thank you. Okay, next page, please. Next page, please. Okay. Okay. Firstly, I will give you a brief introduction on what kind of the business is Qint doing. Qint Group was established in 1804. It's a leading enterprise in electrical and renewable energy industry in China. Lastly, our sales revenue reached 80.5 billion RMB. We are operating in more than 114 countries and have more than 30,000 employees worldwide. Next, please. Next, please. Okay. There are 4 business units in Qint Group. Go back, please. Go back. The first one is smart electrical equipment. We have achieved full coverage from low voltage, middle voltage, and high voltage. The second business unit is renewable energy. We provide renewable energy products and solutions, including PV cell and panel manufacturing, PV generation station construction and operating, energy storage, and energy efficiency management. Next, please. The third business unit is smart home. Next, please. The fourth business unit is industrial control and automation. Next, please. Finding ways to maintain economical, industrial, and energy development while reduce carbon footprint has been focus of Qint's development. Here, I would like to focus more on Qint renewable energy business. Next, please. Next. Let's start our PV manufacturing capability. We have 2 PV cell and panel manufacturing sites in China with a production capacity of 4,200 megawatts per year. The intelligent manufacturing is fully implemented in this facility. So it leads not only to a high productivity and high quality, but also less energy consumption. Next, please. To maintain business development while reduce carbon footprint, we launched a campaign Splendid PV. The building integrated PV is developed by Qint. We recline wastelands to cultivated lands by developing PV power plants, which lends to an effective ecological rehabilitation. We developed a PV plus agriculture model to maximize land utilization. Next, please. Here are 3 examples. One is the cost development with PV. Another one is the PV plus agriculture. Third one is PV plus desert. With that, the afforestation and sand fixation in area of 1,700 hectares is well improved. Next time, next please. Here is the rooftop PV power plants in some industrial parking Qint built. Next. Next, please. Thank you. We developed the residential rooftop PV power plants project, combining with supporting China poverty alleviation policy. Farmers lease their roof to Qint and collect money via mobile apps from electricity generated by PV panel. Qint provided full service from design, erection, operation, and maintenance. Currently, Qint has more than 200,000 residential rooftop PV power plants, with a market share of more than 40%. By the way, Qint has launched the renewable energy business in dozens of countries around the world. So far, global totally installed capacity is more than 4.5 GW, and we have cooperation and keep a close communication with all the international mainstream PV products manufacturer, EPC contractor, and project developers. Next, please. Another core solution regarding reduced carbon footprint is our energy efficiency management solution. This IIoT-based platform can improve the energy utilization efficiency by 3 to 6% for industrial park. Next, please. Regarding how does the COVID-19 pandemic impact on Qint business, I'm happy to tell you the impact is very limited. Why? Next. Just to give you one example of our miniature circuit breaker production. Qint produces 3 million pieces of MCB every day. In the past, the production was very labor intensive. Since 2016, Qint has been developing the intelligent manufacturing production, which reduced the labor by more than 2/3. We achieved the digitalization of the whole process. They play a very important role in maintaining the normal delivery of products. During the pandemic, Qint first half year results is sales grew by 1.26% and profit by the 1.49% compared to same time in 2019. Furthermore, I would like to say COVID-19 pandemic gave us a good lesson and strengthened our belief for further speed up the digital transformation of our business in coming years. Thank you very much for your attention.
Oh, thank you, Long Fu. It was very interesting and potential very promising picture that you drawn. Let's turn to South Africa. In 2019, South Africa was part of the 2019 Voluntary National Review at the High-Level Political Forum on Sustainable Development at the UN, with one of the messages being prioritized access to affordable, reliable, sustainable energy for all. The document also said that the government has a comprehensive set of strategies within key sectors in order to reduce the rise in greenhouse gas emissions and achieve meaningful reductions. Can you share your experiences, Brian? I would like to offer you the floor.
Thank you, Evgeny. And I would ask that they put the presentation on and we'll talk through some of the things that you have asked us to focus on. Good afternoon, good morning, and good evening, colleagues, to our colleagues in Brazil, Russia, India, and China. On the next slide, the topics I'd like to cover is just start off with the impact of COVID. As you rightfully say, talk about South Africa's response around how it not only deals with mitigating the impact of carbon emissions, but also, more importantly, how South Africa and the African continent can deal with the impacts of climate change, because we end up being recipients of its impact. We'll address a little bit some clean energy technologies and how for all of us that can be a road to recovery post-COVID. Last but not least, and one of our first speakers spoke about the 4 pillars, it is our people, and how do we ensure that this transition of the energy is happening in a just way, in a way that protects our economy, protects our community, protects jobs, and provide new excitement. On the next slide, and from a book from Saul Griffin, talked about rewiring America. This quote, in this COVID environment, says, unlike COVID-19, climate change has a vaccine. And that vaccine is quite simply clean energy infrastructure. And it looks like massive electrification using wind, solar, electrification of vehicles. We've spoken about that, heat pumps, and an electrical grid that eventually, if you can imagine, the internet that is absolutely neutral and tie all of this together, an electrical grid can do that. And I thought that's quite apt as an introduction for our discussion this afternoon. But if we deal with the impacts of climate change or the impacts of COVID on our next slide, the biggest economic shock certainly that all of us experienced since the 1930s. And that had a severe impact across the world around employment, investment, including energy. And that comes from the International Energy Agency. And all of our countries have seen that with the emergence of COVID, it has fundamentally shifted the world's energy landscape. It shifted demand, and then obviously it would have significant shifts on the sector in terms of how the sector responds to declining demand, declining prices, and how that subsequently impact jobs and job security across the sector as well as other industries. If we go to the next slide, we look this as global transportation, and it has had a significant impact pre and post COVID, and that deals with some of the aspects around the demand. Within South Africa, on the next slide, we've also seen, like many of our countries in the BRICS nations, so if we can go to the next slide, a significant reduction in demand, and that reduction has been across all sectors of the economy, industrial, residential, transport. Since the lockdown measures has been implemented, these have subsequently been lifted. There has been a slight increase in energy demand, but production still has to be restored to full productivity. And on the next slide, we indicate that the demand has dropped, total energy demand by over 6%, and a lot of that out of coal and oil. And renewables actually has seen an increase in terms of the energy produced by renewables, but all other energies has seen a reduction in demand. If we then go to the next slide, and we can skip the next one, go to the next one. And if we take an African perspective, what is true is that this is a continent that is growing. It is energy hungry. It is a significant demand that's driven by increased urbanization, the creation of mega cities on the African continent, a rising population, and increased industrialization, and essentially is still pretty much a dark continent. And certainly this continent will expand its capacity by significantly, and provides for all of us in the BRICS countries a significant market, with South Africa being the absolute anchor of that market, to serve the rest of the continent. And that expansion will be met essentially by renewables and gas in particular. And South Africa itself will see an expansion of its capacity. And most of that, the size of the current system, will be clean energy. So our view as African Rainbow Energy is that the African continent will have an energy future that will be cleaner, it will be cheaper, and it'll certainly be a lot more flexible. And the reason why that is important is to allow the continent to deal with energy security, to deal with affordability, and to deal with the impacts of sustainability going forward. On the next slide, we then deal specifically with South Africa's energy future. And South Africa, up to 2030, will see an increase in its system capacity by 30 gigawatts. It will mostly be driven by clean energy technologies, wind, solar PV, a significant role of storage within the energy system, and also the increased role of gas in particular, and embedded generation or self-generation, like our colleague from China has shown, how companies and people generate their own electricity. And so that we will see the reduction of coal making 71% of the energy mix, reducing by 2030 to 41%. But the country has already been on this path. On the next slide, we'll talk about the South African Renewable Energy Program. It is certainly one of the world's best run renewable auction programs globally, and it's been set up. And that program is aimed to add to the system that additional capacity that we've been talking about. But they've already started and have made significant progress. And as we can see, we've had renewable projects across different rounds of auctions in South Africa across the whole country. And on the next slide, it has seen employment created, significant jobs being created. It has seen significant jobs created for operational part of the projects as well as the construction part of the projects. And these objectives, and as indicated on our next slide, these objectives are a key part of this program, that as you develop new and cleaner energy, you should also make sure that we do that development throughout the whole of South Africa, which is what we see there, that creates to job creation, investment in local areas, as well as making sure that benefits are sustained for communities going forward. And a big part of this program has been that local communities are then part of equity ownerships within the specific projects, which gives them, over the life of these projects, an absolute stake within the development of clean energy technologies in the area. If we go to the next section and the next slide. And recently, our president has announced, and if we go to the next slide, a specific focus around an infrastructure fund that will be absolutely catalytic. We can move to the next slide. That will see us reform the way of doing business within the country, and also lower the barriers of entry and lower the cost of doing business. And that will see the country immediately unlock 2 gigawatts of power, as well as an additional 12 gigawatts of mostly clean energy that will follow. And together with that, also include the use of battery storage and gas technology. Can we move to the next slide? The next slide. And these opportunities therefore provide a unique opportunity for South Africa as a base within the African continent, provide a unique opportunity where clean energy can provide post-COVID recovery as these investments are being made. It has got a very good program that the country has as a model that can be scaled up and will be scaled up to include other technologies. And BRIC governments and businesses certainly can ensure that we deal with an increased sense of resilience in our energy systems by increasing the speed of the transition in the energy market. There is a significant contribution that we can make in economic recovery, but in this recovery, we should certainly lock in, reduce emissions, and reduce environmental impacts. On the next slide, we deal with the aspects of energy efficiencies, which is a low-hanging fruit that can be implemented immediately. Today, we have energy storage technologies that certainly must be a game changer to support renewable energy deployment and also manage very stable grids. And overall, we are seeing more and more customers having a need for their own power, and hence a very sophisticated decentralized grid systems being developed. And certainly as BRICS countries, we can leverage our collective market and our collective research. On the next slide would be my suggestions of what we as countries commonly across all of us can focus on as post-COVID recovery solution. And that is the rollout of large-scale wind and solar, renewable energy zones that can be developed, and also through that investment, attract foreign direct investment, particularly into South Africa and within the African continent. Distributed energy, particularly the use of solar, would be instrumental. The Internet of Energy, we need to build our transmission and distribution systems more extensively, make sure that those are digitalized, and that it becomes an internet of moving energy around together with efficiency, the smart cities that our colleagues have been talking about. And in many, like our colleagues in India has said, and also in South Africa, how do we repurpose coal plants that we currently have? The last part I'd like to focus on the next slide, and if we can move to the next one, it is the just transition of the energy sector. To enable this just energy transition, it is important that we ensure that this happens in a manner that takes account of the socioeconomic impact of this transition. It is not just an issue for us in South Africa, it is an issue for all of us in BRICS countries, but also in developing markets where you have fossil fuels and you change that. But this also provides an opportunity, many opportunities. And this framework should not only support businesses, but it should also address education and make sure that we have the right skills available within the right numbers. And certainly as BRICS countries, energy skills roadmap needs to be put together to ensure that this happens effectively. On the next slide, it is our perspective that the energy transition is a cheaper option and the costs are lower than business as usual, primarily because of the drop in prices and the improvement in technology. Fossil fuels end up being used by the select few, and we can get renewables to everybody. We can deploy it at scale, and we can use it to solve the last mile problem, particularly within the African continent, where it's such a big continent, and you cannot get grids to everybody to get access to electricity. So you need to find more creative ways to use technology to solve the last mile problem. And as we have said, and as we've demonstrated in South Africa, and it can be true across the African continent, you can create significantly number of new jobs. On the last slide, it is certainly our view that this is, for governments, a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to shape a better energy future for all of our countries. And I think that should be, out of this conference, be the key message that we provide as a seminar to our BRICS business leaders. And the good thing about all of this is that amongst all of us, we all have the expertise, we all have the money, we all have the resources to fundamentally transform our energy systems. Thank you, Chairman. Appreciate it.
Oh, thank you, Brian. It was most interesting. Now let's turn to Lebogang Zulu. I apologize for you had to wait almost 2 hours to make your presentation, but we're looking forward to hear it. Of course, In addition to energy itself, one of the most energy-intensive sectors is construction and infrastructure projects. So I'd like to ask you to tell us more about sustainable infrastructural development and what challenges and opportunities you see there. So the floor is yours.
Thank you, Fokin. It might very well be a blessing to be the last one to speak. I'm going to attempt to greet all of you in all the different languages. Please do bear with me. Privyet Tavarish, hola camaradas, ni hao tong chi, hello comrade. I hope I have not offended anybody by mispronunciation. Revolutionary greetings to the honorable chairs of the BRICS member states and the respective chairs of the working group. I've seen our chairperson, Mambusi, is here, distinguished guests and colleagues. My name is Lebogang Zulu, the Chief Executive of AV South Africa and the recently appointed chairperson of the South African chapter of the BRICS Women's Business Alliance. Now, building on to Brown's presentation, in as far as the work done by South Africa to date in the energy space, I'm going to dive a little deeper into the practical impact of climate change, its challenges and opportunities in the context of sustainable infrastructure development, and how South Africa is reimagining and working towards building a low carbon future generation that is inclusive and geared towards the attainment of the goals of Agenda 2063, that is Africa's blueprint and master plan for transforming Africa into the global powerhouse of the future. I will further present opportunities for greater collaborations between the BRICS member states in taking the green economy forward as we chart our way towards the realization of an African state that is strengthened by supporting integration, industrialization, economic development, trade, and investment. So when I looked at the topic, I was reminded of a TED Talk that Bill Gates gave in March of 2015 that was titled, "The Next Outbreak, We're Not Ready." Now, at that time, the context of that talk sounded so unreal until, of course, March of 2020, when the world came to a complete disarray as a result of the coronavirus outbreak. It becomes very important for us to understand the consequences and the kind of damage that climate change will inflict on the sustainability of our economies. We need to look at COVID-19 and spread the pain over a much longer period of time. Climate change has ushered in an array of anomalies, ranging from excessive high temperatures to winds traveling in excess of 100 kilometers, to floods, droughts, as well as unpredictable rain patterns. Just this past Sunday, in the eastern part of Johannesburg, we experienced at least 3 seasons in one day, from extreme heat to a gush of heavy winds, and that was followed by a heavy rainfall. Now, those are realities of climate change and global warming. To put these effects in context, if you look at droughts, heat waves, and flooding, they have led to a reduction in crop yields and livestock productivity, which speaks directly to the impact on food security. These severe weather conditions have also led to the destruction of many homes, shelters, and villages across Africa, leading to also conflicts over resources that is also exacerbated by these impacts and therefore contributing to the ongoing migration within and between African countries. Climate change, and one of the speakers did make reference to this, climate change is a serious threat to economic, social, and political stability of our countries and will challenge the implementation of the Sustainable Development Goals that we have set for ourselves. If you can move to the next slide, please. Fogin, please move to the next slide. Right, so COVID-19 has fueled the next wave of innovations that forces the world to look at sustainable economic development in the context of climate change and the fourth industrial revolution. Now, this particular slide zooms in on 4 specific areas where climate change poses a serious threat to sustainable development, especially in developing economies. Hungry people cannot go to work. Hungry children cannot go to school. Increased frequency of severe weather events are contributing immensely to food insecurity. Now, opportunities in this regard has seen through new agricultural practices and technologies that are largely shaping how farmers are mitigating and adapting to minimizing the impact of climate change on food security. The Limpopo province of South Africa is currently exploring opportunities presented by hydroponic agriculture potato farming. We are currently working with farmers in this project to use innovative building technologies to design and produce the most effective hydroponic system that would maximize farming production output within the challenges presented by climate change. Now, in the context of the construction industry, that's my area of expertise. This is an industry that has a significant impact on the environment. Various studies have been published internationally indicating that construction is responsible for up to 50% of climate change and 40% of energy usage globally. Now, from an African continent perspective, infrastructure is a key driver for progress and a critical enabler for productivity and sustainable economic growth. The story of Africa's development is changing. 6 of the world's fastest growing economies are in Africa. Democratic governance has been strengthened over the past 5 decades, enabling a platform for stable growth and prosperity in most parts of the continent. So therefore, in the context of sustainable infrastructure development, innovations and technologies have become a crucial part of delivering infrastructure that can withstand the kind of climatic challenges that are brought by climate change, while ensuring that jobs are created and sustained. Now, to this end, with a span of over 41 innovative building technologies that are available in South Africa, and as part of the Sustainable Infrastructure Development Symposium that was launched by the Honorable President in July of this year, South Africa is working on incorporating labor-intensive innovative building technologies in a bid to accelerate delivery of sustainable infrastructure, inclusive, of course, of smart cities with energy efficient and resilient homes, schools, health facilities, and other critical social infrastructures that can withstand and cap the impact of climate change and natural disasters. And further to that, and as part of optimizing innovations, various initiatives are undertaken in the water and sanitation space with technologies that not only recycles the use of water and waste, but are cost-effective as well. Now, in the context of energy mix, Brian has presented a well-articulated South Africa's drive in the renewable energy space. And what progress have we achieved thus far? I therefore cannot overemphasize the urgent need for a cost-effective energy mix while keeping fossil fuel power as a base load supported by cleaner and greener renewable energy sources. The impact of climate change on the social and well-being of our people. An adequate, well-distributed, and motivated healthy workforce is central to the achievement of sustainable development goals. Climate change and other forms of environmental degradation have already caused a net negative impact on jobs and work productivity. And these impacts are expected to become more pronounced in the next coming decades. COVID-19 has had its fair share on exacerbating an increase in rates of unemployment, especially in developing countries like ours. Higher temperatures stemming from climate change and global warming are expected to worsen working conditions and therefore reducing labor productivity. So the importance of mitigating job losses and creating new job opportunities with a target of at least 9 million jobs created by 2030 has also seen through the Presidential Employment Stimulus Plan that was launched by His Excellency Ramaphosa a couple of days ago. Job creation, therefore, is at the center of reindustrialization, localization, and deployment of labor-intensive technologies as the country rebuilds amid the economic and social impact of the COVID-19 pandemic. If you can move to the next slide, please. Right, so further opportunities of cooperation between BRICS member states are presented through the much anticipated infrastructure development plan that we speak so proudly about as South Africans. However, prioritizing, accelerating, and scaling up quality infrastructure development to not only address backlogs, but to also be able to meet up with the new infrastructure demands, not only in South Africa, but in the African continent, will require us to take an out-of-the-box type approach. It cannot be business as usual. It has to be business unusual. The fourth industrial revolution, coronavirus outbreak, and climate change have ushered in an era where technologies and innovations are leading almost every economic sector. And in consideration of the high employment challenges we have in the continent, SMME development, and deeply entrenched inequalities, irrespective of brilliant transformation policies we have put in place, South Africa has a unique opportunity to restructure its industrial sector through the green economy agenda and become the largest factory of technology and innovations in Africa. So positioning South Africa as that largest factory of technologies and innovation presents an opportunity for greater collaborations with the BRICS member states, considering the advancement of technologies deployed by countries like China in its position as the largest world factory, and that has capacity of producing machineries at a speed that is required. Countries like India for its robust steel industry capacity. And of course, countries like Russia for its advanced technologies in the energy space. With South Africa capacitated as the largest factory of technologies and innovation, the African continent will be empowered to address its sustainable infrastructure needs and untap the greatest economic potential of Africa. COVID-19 has been nothing more than a stern warning from nature. The loss of life and economic misery caused by this pandemic are on par with what will happen regularly if we do not put climate change at the center of sustainable economic development. Technologies and innovations are leading us to a new climate change era. And that brings me to the end of my presentation. So I opened with my best attempt at greeting all of you in various BRICS languages. I'd like to close off with my native language and say, Nkosi Sigelela amazwe e-BRICS ngiyabonga. Directly translated, of course, as God bless the BRICS countries, I thank you.
Oh, thank you, Libogang. It was most interesting. And we have run out of time, so we'll have to round up the discussion. So thank you all for making time and for your contributions. Within just 2 hours, we were able to cover so many relevant issues and got a better understanding of them from such different perspectives. I'm truly impressed of how many things we were able to discuss today, and I hope that our audience found it as much interesting as we did. Unfortunately, we don't have any time left, so there'll be, this is where our conference ends, but our work on sustainable development will continue. I hope to see each and every one of you in person next year. Stay safe and good luck. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Go, bye-bye.